Is Kimi Raikkonen a Formula One driver reborn now he's in the midfield with Alfa Romeo? To help me find that out, I've got Ed Straw and Scott Mitchell with me. Ed, we've often questioned Raikkonen's value to a top team when he was filling a seat at Ferrari, but since he's gone back to Alfa Romeo, which of course was formerly Sauber, is he a man reborn? How has he been performing so far?
He's been performing outstandingly well. He's done a great job for this team. He's on average the 11th fastest driver. He's in the 7th fastest car, yet there he is. 8th in the championship. He scored points in 8 out of 12 races. Would have been 9 but for the penalty in Germany that they're still protesting. So he's been a very, very consistent performer, racked up almost all of their points. Antonio Giovinazzi and the other cars only scored 1 point. What Raikkonen is doing is putting everything together. He often almost ghosts his way to 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th places. You don't necessarily see what he's up to. It's not flashy, but he's consistent. He hits his marks. He extracts decent pace from the car, and he's just racking up point after point after point, which is exactly what a team like Alfa Romeo needs. Like I said about the points comparison, if they had 2 Giovinazzis in the car, they wouldn't have very many. But with Raikkonen, rock solid performances, doing exactly what a midfield team needs.
Scott, what do you think is behind this? Has Raikkonen changed something? Is he more motivated this year? Or is it simply a case that the demands are different at the front of the grid versus the midfield, and perhaps he's more suited to driving a car like this?
I think it's a combination of factors. I think he does fit into the requirements of a midfield driver more than he does a top-line driver. I think he's lost the crazy speed that he had when he was at McLaren and then switched to Ferrari. But I especially remember those sort of mid-noughties, the early noughties, mid-noughties at McLaren, some of the qualifying laps. He just seemed over one lap to just be better than everybody. And unsurprisingly, that fades with time, and he also had that spell away, didn't he? So I just think that slight drop in one lap pace, and it just always seemed a little bit slightly laissez-faire in battle. Just when he came up to someone, you kind of get the impression that you get now when Valtteri Bottas comes up behind someone. It's almost a bit of a foregone conclusion that he's not going to pull a Ricciardo or something like that and absolutely nail him with a brilliant dive bomb. So I just think that didn't really bring out the best in him, especially when you combine it with another factor, which is I just don't think he gets the most out of a Ferrari kind of situation, or necessarily that a Ferrari kind of situation gets the best out of Kimi. He's much happier with this smaller, zero politics, less BS basically, in a world where he's happy, he spends more time with his family. He said earlier this year, don't underestimate how important that is for a guy like Kimi to just have so much less fuss, just be able to focus on the bit that he likes, which is racing and racing well, which is exactly what he's doing. Fred Vasseur, the team principal of Alfa Romeo, said to me before the summer break that basically he doesn't think Kimi could have scored more points this year. Everything that's been available, he's gone out there and got. And yeah, what a turnaround from where he was at Ferrari, because he looked massively out of place in a top team. He didn't really deserve it anymore, and he's almost justified his enduring existence in Formula One because he's now one of the star performers in the midfield, and he's not taking up a space that should go to anyone else. I don't think anyone else would necessarily be doing a better job in the car than Kimi is.
Well, that brings me on to my next point, actually. We know the ties between Alfa Romeo and Ferrari are close, and arguably this could be viewed as a B team or a junior team to Ferrari, much in the way that Toro Rosso can groom drivers for Red Bull. If you look at it that way, you wouldn't say a guy who can see his 40th birthday not too far on the horizon would be a good fit there. But you said you were talking to Fred Vasseur about the impact Raikkonen's had there. Do you actually think in some ways he's the perfect lead driver for them at the moment? Yeah, absolutely, because he isn't the Ferrari driver in the Alfa team. Antonio Giovinazzi is the Ferrari driver. You could argue it's a soft landing that Ferrari can facilitate, but it's something that he wanted to do. Otherwise, it would have been a 1 year, pick up a bit of extra money because you're meant to be at Ferrari next year and then disappear for 2020. He's got a 2-year deal. The way he's driving at the moment, you certainly wouldn't get rid of him if you're Alfa Romeo. Why would Kimi step away when he's enjoying F1 more? F1's become more of a hobby for him. That's what he said a few races into the season, and he sort of turned some heads and everyone was like, what's he doing? Why has he said that? I mean, it makes sense because by that he means it's just something he enjoys. It's something he's back loving it again. And when you've got a driver driving as well as he is, then yeah, Alfa and Fred must be absolutely over the moon. He must be exceeding expectations for what they thought they were getting with him. Yes, he's a world champion, multiple race winner and all of this, but I couldn't have imagined him going to Alfa and doing as well as he's done.
And you can't underestimate the value of that experience. Raikkonen has a clear idea of the way he likes to do things. Doesn't necessarily always work perfectly with a top team, but with this team that has gone through the mill over the years, obviously it went very, very close to falling apart because they were struggling financially. Obviously, new ownership, investment from Alfa Romeo. So it's really building back up now. But here they've got a driver who not only is a very consistent reference point, they've got a driver who they've been able to tailor the car for. If you watch him on track, I was watching in Hungary before the August break in FP3, and you could see he had that ability to turn in the car the way he wanted to. He's really getting the nose into the corner, keeping it tight. That's always a sign of a good Raikkonen. So they're not having to, perhaps as they were with Charles Leclerc, who was their de facto lead driver last year, they're not having to guide him or educate him. They can follow his lead. And that's really, really valuable for a team like this that probably has in some ways almost forgotten what it's like to have somebody like this who can also bring big team practices, all that experience he's gained over the years, to plug it into a team like Alfa and say, actually, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. And I think they're very, very good for getting the best out of each other. And from that perspective, it seemed like this 2-year deal was going to be probably the 2-year deal to see him out. But at the current performance, he should perform well next year. And you might even be looking at a third year and continuing beyond, which is absolutely incredible for a driver who once looked like Formula One was over when he went into rallying.
One thing I would add to what Ed was saying about what Alfa gets from Kimi and what he gets from them is that the way that team has developed, as Sauber last year and now it's morphed into Alfa Romeo, is the team has constantly risen. And even if you say that Kimi's maybe come down a little bit in terms of his status as a world champion, the team's up to the point now where I think it can actually accommodate a driver of Kimi's standing. And I think this is an underestimated point a lot of the time in Formula One. The team has to be ready for a certain calibre of driver. And you're probably better placed to comment on this than me. But for example, where McLaren is at the moment isn't right for Fernando Alonso. It wasn't right for Fernando Alonso. But it is for younger drivers. So I'm sure Alfa is getting a benefit out of that as well.
Yeah, certainly. I think Raikkonen is the right kind of driver. OK, he'd love to be racing for wins. He's not happy finishing 7th regularly as such, but he is content contributing to a team and getting close to the best out of the car and enjoying himself. So they're two teams at the right level. If Alfa was, let's say 5 years down the line, it's going to be a championship contender, Raikkonen would probably be the wrong driver to have. Maybe an OK number 2, notwithstanding the fact he'd be in his mid-40s by then. But it's all about these combinations of team and driver that fit in well. And they've also got a driver that a less experienced other driver can learn from, such as Giovinazzi. And we have seen Giovinazzi improve, even though his races have been a little bit frustrating. So he's just a great point of calm and order and consistency within a team that's changed so much over the past 18 months.